Here we are, Real Recovery Talk. I am your host, Tom Conrad. In today's episode, it is just me today, and glad to be here. So let's just hop right into it. But first things first, thank you for tuning in on whatever podcast app it is that you choose to use. And thank you for watching on YouTube. And also, if you want to reach out to me, you can reach out Tom at realrecoverytalk.com and Ben at realrecoverytalk.com. And we'll get back to you. We'll get back to you about your current situation. We're going to ask you for your phone number. So feel free to reach out. It's, we'll just have a conversation and see if we can help you navigate your current situation, whether it's with yourself or a loved one. All right, so let's just get right into it. I wanted to record an episode because I see a lot of people self-sabotaging themselves in their recovery journey, and wanted to discuss a little bit about that and kind of what I see when it comes to self-sabotaging. Self-sabotaging in a nutshell isn't much there's not much that goes into it. What it's self-sabotage is what it is. It's somebody that is legitimately taking the initiative to self-sabotage their own recovery for whatever reason. And why we see that take place, I've yet to fully understand, but I do see a couple of main themes. And the first one is going to be the uncomfortability aspect of recovery and or sobriety. And the reason that I say uncomfortability is because when you remove drugs and alcohol, and if you've been listening to this show for any length of time, you know how I talk about how drugs and alcohol is just a symptom. It's something that we use to cope with uncomfortable situations. And so when we get sober, and we remove the drugs and the alcohol, we're removing our coping skill with said situation, said feeling, said emotion, whatever it is. Because we use drugs and alcohol to celebrate the wins, to deal with the losses, to grieve, if we get any sort of bad news, whatever the case is, we generally speaking always turn to drugs and alcohol to cope with that. And so when people get sober, we remove that. And now it's up to us through maybe a therapeutic process or a 12-step process, or your church, Celebrate Recovery, to come up with other coping skills to deal with these situations. And when I see people that they get to the point where the drugs and the alcohol is they're sober, it's removed, but they haven't really gone through many situations that are uncomfortable. Um, it really, for lack of a better way to put it, separates the men from the boys or the girls from the women. When we get put in these uncomfortable situations and we don't have the coping skills to deal with them, and what we've been used to is drugs and alcohol, if we haven't developed any sort of foundation in our sobriety, it's easy for us to turn back to that. And I see people self sabotage themselves, especially in the treatment space. And I'm in Florida. It's there's a lot of people that come here for treatment, and it's a well-known fact that it is a treatment hub, and that's great. I mean, you're not going to find recovery anywhere like you do here in South Florida because there's such a rich population of people here that come here from all over the country to get clean and sober. There's just ample opportunity for sobriety and recovery. But with that being said, when people come here for treatment, generally speaking, they need to have some sort of insurance. And whether that's through their parents or through their employer or through the marketplace, whatever the case is, they generally have some sort of insurance. So self sabotage can become very, very easy for somebody that has an insurance card. There was a point in time not a long time ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago, 6 years ago, where if you had a certain type of insurance, you could go to as many treatment centers as you wanted. You could go to whatever treatment center that you wanted to. And it was a very well known thing that if you didn't want to be clean and you didn't want to be sober, well, that's fine. You could just go to treatment. You have the insurance, the availability is there for you. So just go use. It's not a big deal. And so there was a saying down here that people were using their insurance cards like a Amex card. And you want to talk about self sabotage. This is where we would see it the most. People would come near the end of their treatment stay or the end of their treatment stay, and they didn't really do a whole lot while they were in treatment. They didn't learn coping skills. They didn't participate in groups. They didn't participate in their one on ones with their therapist. They just kind of skated through and they didn't develop any of the real tools necessary to maintain long term sobriety. So, when whatever treatment center says, okay, Johnny, your treatment is over, it's been 60 days, 90 days, 120 days. What would the client do? What would Johnny do if he didn't have the tools necessary to stay sober? Or he didn't just want to go out and get a job. He didn't want to become financially responsible. He didn't want to take on the responsibilities that life requires. Well, I guess I can just go use. And if I use, then I'll just go back into treatment and I will start this cycle all over again. And that is one of the biggest ways that I see people self sabotage themselves. There's a saying that the recovery starts when the insurance stops. Let me say that again. The recovery starts when the insurance stops. And I've seen this time and time and time again. Most people age out of their parents' insurance at 26 years old. I know there are some instances where you can age out at 30. There's certain um, maybe policies or procedures through an employer that would allow you to stay on longer. But lo and behold, most people age out of their insurance at 26 years old. And I have personally seen people that have been in and out of treatment centers since they were 18, 19, 20 years old up until their 26th birthday. They haven't stayed sober for 5 or 6 years, and they've been using their insurance card as a Amex card, and they've just treatment hopped for 5 or 6 years. But when their birthday comes and they now know, okay, I can't go to treatment anymore, or the best treatment that I'm going to get is at, DAF or Salvation Army or the homeless shelter or the hospital, whatever the case is, something clicks. And they now know, okay, I don't have my insurance card to fall back on. And it's crazy. They'll do what it takes to get sober. It's very unfortunate because if you really think about it, you can totally transform your life in 5 years. You can totally transform your life in 1 year, in 6 months. I've seen people make miraculous changes in a very short period of time, but they've spent the last 5 or 6 years just treatment hopping, going from this treatment center to that treatment center, relapse after relapse after relapse, maybe throw a kid in the mix. They got somebody pregnant or they got pregnant and their life went absolutely nowhere in 5 years. That is one of the saddest things that I see rather often in the treatment world. I know when I got sober in 2010, I went to treatment one time. I'm not saying that I'm any better than anybody. I'm not saying that I'm less of an alcoholic or less of an addict. You may think that, or I know people that think that, but to me, I can care less. Um, I quickly realized when I removed alcohol from my body and it wasn't something that I was going to fall back on, that my life got better day by day. And I understood the whole idea of, you know, compounding interest, if you will. As each day went by, I was sober and things got better. I didn't fall into a big pile of money. I didn't land my dream job. I didn't, have a big white light experience and this big revelation of, oh, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to start, creating content around sobriety, so on and so forth. Things generally speaking just got better. I felt better. I was in better health. I was able to pay more attention to the things that were most important at the time in 2010 and 11. My friendships, my relationships with people, the network that I was building. And I quickly understood that I could go a long way with this. And to the normal person, and I say normal in air quotes, but to the normal person, this is just a everyday kind of thing. This is a this is no we're not reinventing the wheel here. Normal people understand, at least most normal people understand that the whole idea behind life is we need to progress. As we get older, we creep up the corporate ladder. We make more money, we develop better relationships with people, we maybe have children, we get married, whatever the case is. That's just what normal people do. But as addicts and alcoholics, we stall that out and we don't do that. We like the chaos. We like the shitstorm that we're causing ourselves and we thrive in it. But when rubber meets the road and it's time for us to clean up and to get sober, it's a very tough thing to do, but it gives us a completely different perspective. See, I believe that us in recovery that are in sobriety and are able to sustain long term sobriety, we have a different perspective on life. A friend of mine he wrote a book actually. It's called The Unfair Advantage. And I firmly believe that we have an unfair advantage to life. We're able to see certain situations through a different lens. We're able to navigate life in a different way. Things don't impact us the way that it impacts normal people, so on and so forth, because we've been through so much in our addiction that we are able to handle situations that quote unquote normal people aren't able to handle. Or if they do, they handle it in a poor manner. So you can see why self-sabotage is a real thing, especially in the treatment space. Um, and the other reason is, and I told you there were two. The other one is just all around fear, uncertainty of what sobriety is going to look like. And I'm going to reference myself because I've done well for myself in my sobriety. I've come a long way. Doesn't mean that I haven't had my setbacks and I haven't had my you know, uh, tough situations, if you will. When I was 6 months sober, I was in a really, really dark place. I didn't really know where my life was going at that point. See, I had rode this pink cloud, sobriety is such a great thing. Um, I was on this pink cloud. I was super sober, if you will. And at 6 months, the cloud kind of, or the bubble burst, I guess. And I fell into a depression. I was in Florida. I had developed friendships with people, but I was still living in sober living. And I just didn't know where my life was going. I wasn't working. I was actively working steps and had a sponsor and doing all those things, but I wasn't doing a whole lot to progress. So I fell into a depression and I went to a mentor of mine, not my sponsor, but a mentor. And I went to him and I said, his name was Jim. I said, Jim, if this is what sobriety is all about, no thanks. I don't really care to have it. And he said something to me that was so simple. He said, have you talked to anybody about this other than me just now? And I said, no. He said, well, you may want to start talking to people about what's going on in your mind, the emotions that you're having, because we can't do this alone. And lo and behold, that night I had gone to a core group of guys that I had gotten close to, and I was telling them about, the feelings that I was having, and they related. And I was like, "Oh, okay. I'm not the only person that's going through this." And that was a learning experience for me because I told Jim when I was talking to him, either I need to go on medication or I'm going to go back out drinking. And I knew drinking wasn't an option. I didn't end up doing both. I, got with my core group of people and I started talking about it. And lo and behold, I got through it. And I've had a few of those over the years. And so going back to the fear, a lot of times people, when they get clean and sober, there's so much fear around the future. What is the future going to consist of? Am I doing this the right way? Is there something that I don't understand about sobriety? What's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to my future? Am I going to get a job? Am I going to get these things that, they talk about in the meetings that I've been going to every day? My friends, they all seem to be landing such good jobs. And I just don't know if that's in the cards for me. And that is a very crippling thing for people. Fear can cause us to act in ways that we know we're not supposed to. We know what's on the other side of it. We know what happens if we pick up a drink or if we pick up a drug, but it is so hard for us to deal with the fear and the uncertainty of what's on the other side of this that we go back to what is most comfortable, which is picking up a drink or a drug. Even though history has proven itself, what happens when we do these things, when we pick up a drink and when we pick up a drug, history proves it. We've gone through and we've seen the chaos that it causes. But you know what? At least we know what's coming down the line. You see, when we get sober, we can't predict the future. We don't know what's going to happen. Is there going to be financial insecurity? Are there going to be relationships that are lost? Are there going to be death within the family? Am I going to be hurt by somebody? Am I going to hurt somebody else? Am I just going to get ahead? Am I going to get the job that I want? I don't even know what I want to do with my life. All these things hit us all at once when we get sober. And it could be a real crippling thing. But we do know that picking up a drug and picking up alcohol, we know what our future is going to look like. It's going to look like crap. It's not going to look fun. It's not going to look appealing. But you know what? We at least know that it's there. We know what's coming. And that will cause people to self sabotage. That will cause people to just throw in the towel. So I encourage you that if you are in this place, if this is something that you have struggled with, you can reach out to me, Tom at realrecoverytalk.com. I will gladly have a conversation with you about your specific situation. If you are a loved one that has somebody in your life that you feel like is just not heading down the right path, Maybe they're in sobriety, maybe they're not. Whatever the situation is, you can reach out to me, Tom at realrecoverytalk.com. You can also reach out to Ben at realrecoverytalk.com. And all we'll do, we're going to ask you for your phone number and we're going to get back to you. And hopefully, we can help you turn your mess into your message. That is it. We will see y'all later.